Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for joining us for the second edition of the Climate Reality Project Canada's webinar series, From One Coast to the Others, Canada's Regions Speak Up on Climate. So this is a program of presentations given once a month by climate reality leaders who were trained by Al Gore to communicate the science of and the solutions to climate change and to lead their communities in a just transition to carbon neutrality. We trust that the stories of determination and resilience you're about to hear will inspire you to lead change in your own community. My name is Paula Bernardino. I am the lead mentor for the Montreal region. And today you will be hearing from a climate reality leader, Lou Collin, who is joining us live from Montreal, representing the region of Quebec. This presentation will be 30 minutes long and will be followed by a 15-minute Q&A period. So if you have any questions, I invite you to hold on to them or enter them in the chat, and Lou will be happy to take them at the end of this webinar. So Lou is a French student at Concordia University in Montreal. She is studying human environment and sociology, and she's deeply interested in climate justice and alternative agriculture like polyculture and urban agriculture. So with no further ado, let's get ready to learn about local impacts of climate change in the Quebec region and to get inspired by stories and solutions from that region. Up to you, Lou.
Hi, everyone. Before starting the presentation, I would like to begin by acknowledging that I'm located on unceded Indigenous lands. The Kanien'kehá:ka Nation is recognized as the custodians of the lands and waters on which I stand today. Tiohtià:ke Montreal is historically known as a gathering place for many First Nations. Today, it is home to a diverse population of Indigenous and other people. I respect the continued connection with the past, present, and future in our ongoing relationships with Indigenous and other people within the Montreal community. I'm just going to take a minute to explain why I'm doing this presentation today. So if I'm now a student in Montreal, I grew up in France. And on the right side of the screen, you can see a picture of my garden. It's surrounded by a small river. And over the years, the floods became more frequent and more intense. It was always very spectacular, and I wondered as a kid why it was getting worse and worse. And the more I learned growing up about climate change, the more alarmed I became. This is why I'm doing everything in my power today to educate and raise awareness about the climate crisis. Starting by this presentation. So let's get into it. There are only 3 questions remaining about the climate crisis. Must we change? Can we change? Will we change? First of all, must we change? The scientific community all around the world has been telling us for a long time that yes, we must change. Now, Mother Nature is telling us. 19 of the 20 hottest years ever measured with instruments have occurred since 2001 worldwide. The hottest year of all was 2016. It has, of course, affected Quebec too. So here is a graphic made by the Regional Consortium on Climatology and Adaptation to Climate Change, named URANOS. It shows the increase of temperatures in Quebec, more precisely the number of days greater than 30 degrees every year. Around 10 years ago, it was around 10-15 days each year that were superior to 30 degrees. In 20 years, there will be 14 days approximately that have temperatures greater than 30 degrees. So more than a month. Higher temperatures also have a direct effect on the incidence and severity of wildfires. So here you can see a picture of a forest fire in Lac Saint-Jean, Quebec in 2020. Another aspect of climate change is flooding. And if this is a worldwide issue, it is also a local one. This picture has been taken in May 2017, were a huge flood due to above average precipitation in April and May in the Ottawa Basin River damaged the region of Quebec. Most people think climate change is happening somewhere far away or that it's something far in the future. This picture alone tells us that it is here and has already affected Quebec for years now. Indeed, flood hazard constitutes the main natural risk in Quebec, and in 2017 alone, it forced 4,000 people to evacuate their homes. And according to the Insurance Bureau of Canada, it caused insured damage exceeding 220 million Canadian dollars. And this kind of event is 2 to 3 times more likely to occur now than in pre-industrial time due to climate change. And it affects more the north of Quebec than the south. Indeed, the erosion of the shoreline in marine coastal environments is a major problem for the Côte-Nord, Bas-Saint-Laurent, and Gaspésie-Île-de-la-Madeleine region. In recent decades, it has caused considerable expenses related to the moving of roads and the construction of protective structures. In Nunavik, it has resulted with a potential 4 to 5 degrees increase by 2050 and 4 to 7.5 degrees by 2100. It will also increase the precipitation from 20 to 35% by 2050. And it will have a lot of impacts like coastline shifting near infrastructure, obliging people to resettle and move out of their homes. Now, I want to take a minute to link the pandemic and environmental racism. So a study out of Harvard recently found that someone living in an area of high particulate pollution is actually more likely to die from 8% more likely to die from COVID than someone living in an area just one small unit less polluted. So 8% maybe doesn't seem like much to you, but imagine doing a surgery where you have 8% chance of dying. It seems a lot, right? So how is that linked to social justice? Indigenous communities and African American communities are often forced to live in fence-line communities that are adjacent to companies that emit hazardous waste and polluting companies in general. Consequently, they have more chronic diseases such as asthma and hypertension, which makes them more vulnerable to pulmonary disease like COVID-19. Furthermore, in Quebec, especially northern Quebec, the communities most affected by biodiversity loss and climate change in general are native population. Indeed, the melting of permafrost is making it more difficult for them to access the territory and traditional foods. Moreover, in Quebec, especially in Montreal, we have a biodiversity loss. And in 2013, Montreal was ranked last city in Canada per capita per green space. Plus, from 1983 to 2004, insurance claims in Canada from several weather events total almost 4 million Canadian dollars a year. Climate change is expected to cost Canada's economy $5 billion a year by 2020 and as much as $43 billion a year by 2050. Inaction is simply not an option. And inaction is getting more and more expensive every year. So all of these threats, including many we haven't even covered here, and the fact that the World Economic Forum says climate change is the #1 threat to the global economy, help to answer to the question, must we change? So do we have to change? Yes, we do. But what about the second question? Can we change? The answer to this question is very, very exciting and positive. We've got the solution available to us now. For example, look at renewable energy. Solar energy is a very successful story. 18 years ago, the best projection was that we would install 1 gigawatt of solar energy capacity per year worldwide by 2010. In 2019, we exceeded that goal by 121 times. And solar energy is now really low cost, thanks to all the technological progress that has been made. For example, in Montreal in 2019, the domestic kilowatt by hour was 2 times lower than in Halifax and 3 times lower than in New York. And photovoltaic solar panels have dropped in price by 90% in the past 5 years. Plus, the average Quebec solar panel offset 178 tons of CO2 over 30 years, which is the equivalent to planting 10 hockey rinks with trees. So every hour, the Earth gets as much energy from the sun as we need to run the entire global economy for a year. If we can increase the fraction of this energy that we harvest and use, we can make a lot of progress towards solving the climate crisis and helping local economies at the same time. For wind energy, it could supply 40 times more electricity than the entire world currently uses. In Quebec, wind power potential exceeds 400 gigawatts, enough to power North America 3 times with clean energy. In Quebec, the first wind turbine was installed in 1975 by Hydro-Québec, and Quebec is now the second wind market in Canada. In 1998, 120 wind turbines were installed. Now we have over 2,000. And here you can see a map of, so all the orange spots are the wind turbines that are already installed in Quebec, and all the gray ones are the ones that are being constructed or will arrive soon. However, these technologies are not perfect either. Electric cars have lithium batteries that needs a lot of water to be produced, and implies lithium mining that generally takes place in Central America and Southeast Asia. Biofuel crops takes a lot of land to grow, but these technologies are getting better and more efficient every year, and we have to remember that they are very new. For example, solar panels have entered the market only 25 years ago, when fossil fuels have been used for centuries. So we definitely need to invest more in research to make them more efficient. However, basing our hopes on technology is not necessarily wise. It's a complex problem that requires changes on every level. Indeed, according to a study by Grant, the industrial food system is responsible for about 50% of global greenhouse emissions. So a food system based on peasant farming could reduce from 24 to 30% of GHG emissions. So peasant can seem like a bad word, but it's actually used in a lot of countries to describe an alternative agriculture contrary to conventional monoculture intensive farming. Peasant agriculture is defined by small-scale farms, very few or no pesticides, a system of crop rotation, and polyculture, which means instead of cultivating one type of vegetable, for example, they're cultivating many. Peasant agriculture is actually feeding 70% of the world right now, and it's mostly women that are leading the change. Switching from conventional farming to peasant farming would reduce GHG emission because it would use less machinery and reduce pesticide use. A number of farms in Quebec are using this method, like La Ferme des Quatre Temps. I will talk about that later. Now, on a policy level, there is a lot we can do. the first thing is to divest from fossil fuels and ask your governments and big companies to divest from fossil fuels. About the Just Transition Act, in 2019, Prime Minister Mr. Trudeau promised to introduce a Just Transition Act, ensuring that workers have access to the training and support they need to succeed in the clean new economy. And as of today, we are still waiting for him to deliver that promise. Some other solution could be to subsidize farmers to ease the transition towards agroecology, and more responsible practices. Another solution is to do a climate test before taking any decision or making any project to make sure it doesn't damage excessively the environment. And an alternative evaluation method called the social multi-criteria evaluation will allow to takes into account a lot of different indicators before starting a big project. The advantages would be to take every aspect of the project into account, but by capturing not only purely environmental aspects, but also social ones, like the hypothetical cost of illness with the increase of GHG emissions that a project could produce if it's a polluting project. The replacement cost evaluating the ecosystem, the value of the ecosystem that the project is about to destroy. It also contains cyclic evaluation, contrary to the traditional cost-benefit analysis that only do estimation on a moment X. Indeed, this method implies making several surveys over time because we recognize that knowledge co-evolves over time and that people might know little of a project and its consequences at the beginning. So can we change? Yes. What about the final question? Will we change? Here too, there is some exciting news. In December of 2015, as the Paris climate negotiations, every nation in the world agreed to phase down greenhouse gas pollution to net zero emission as early as in the second half of this century as possible. Climate action isn't just about what countries do. We all have to take the lead on climate. We're seeing corporations, states and provinces and cities commit to reduce emissions. We're seeing marches and demonstrations and demand at the ballot box for the changes necessary to solve this crisis. Talking about alternative agriculture, there is a lot that is available in Quebec right now. So a few examples here. So Lufa Farms is a system of farming located mostly in Montreal, and they grow vegetables and fruits on the roofs of the downtown buildings of Montreal, and they also deliver these fresh fruits and vegetables to your door. So you can order online fruits and vegetables, and they will deliver it to your door. Panier Québécois has the same model. Union Paysanne is a union for farmers to help them start a dialogue and have a sense of community. For the Ferme des Quatre Temps, this farm is located in Hemmingford, Montérégie. It's a very innovative 160 acres agricultural project that use agroecological methods. It's a small scale farm doing polyculture, which means instead of cultivating one type of vegetable, they cultivate around 40-50 different vegetables organically grown on only 8 acres, which improves soil quality, biodiversity, and reduce the need of fertilizer. They also raise beef, chickens, and have their own meat little factory. The also very innovative part is that they train wannabe farmers to give them the tools to create their own responsible and agroecological farm of projects later. Victim of their success, they are expanding and just creating a new farm in Port-au-Persil, Charlevoix. You can purchase their products from through Jean Talon Market, and also Lufa has some of their products. Now, the Canadian Government Action Plan. On September 23rd, 2020, the federal government reiterated its commitment to net zero emission by 2050. Some of the key points. For agriculture, they want to reduce fertilizer, and $166 million are going to be given to support farmers adopting clean technologies. A little note to that could be that instead of trying to make monoculture more efficient, we could have promoted small farmers and polyculture over intensive farming. About the carbon taxes, they have added carbon taxes for 4 provinces: New Brunswick, Alberta, Manitoba, and Saskatchewan. The carbon taxes will be adapted to the income and number of people by household. For the conservation part, they commit to protect to 25% of Canada's ocean by 2025 and 20% of Canada's land by 2025 too. Quebec also recently put a new climate plan that is criticized for its lack of audacity. It's because it's mostly based on the electrification of transportation, but it does have $8,000 incentives to buy an electric car and free road tolls for hybrid and electric cars. They also want to put 1.5 million electric vehicles on Quebec roads by 2030. They want to prohibit the sale of new gas-powered vehicles starting in 2035. And they want to reduce by 500,000 kilos the amount of pesticides sold. Montreal also has a new climate plan that is more ambitious because it wants to reduce the community greenhouse gas emission by 55% below the 90 levels within 10 years and to achieve carbon neutrality by 2050. They also plan to dedicate 10 to 15% of Montreal budget on climate change mitigation. They will put in place a climate test before realizing any new projects. And they want to install a carbon-free zone in downtown Montreal before 2030, which means it would be an area of downtown completely car-free. They also commit to plant 500,000 trees in order to reduce heat and encourage biodiversity. Montreal also commits that in 2030, new buildings won't be able to function with fossil fuel energy and will have to function only with clean energies. Now I want to talk about something that is very topical now, and it's the GNL project. So basically the GNL project is a project of creating a huge gas liquefaction center in Saguenay, Quebec. This gas will arrive through a pipeline coming from Alberta, and this project emissions would be the equivalent to add 10 million cars on the Quebec's roads every year. This gas would after be exported on gigantic boats that would cross the Saguenay Fjord and endanger the already almost extinct beluga species. It's a project created by an American billionaire, Jim Breyer, that is a major investor in coal industry, who is using a shadow company to make Quebecers believe it's a Quebec initiative. but in reality, the large majority of income will go to the US investors and not the locals living there. Something called the BAP was created. It's an independent committee that just quite recently closed its evaluation of the environmental impacts of the projects. But it's led by someone that worked for the petrochemical industry for 15 years. So this independent committee is not really neutral on the topic. They will be giving their final decision to go on or not with the project in the coming weeks. There has been a huge mobilization around this project, with a petition supported by more than 300,000 students that are putting pressure on the government to give up the project. So please join the voices, those who are speaking out, voting, and making everyday choices to fight the climate crisis. Use your vote, your voice, and your choices in the marketplace and in your life. Speak truth to power like your world depends on it, because your world depends on it. And just a quick reminder, tomorrow is a global day of climate action. And there will also be a strike in Montreal against the GNL project and Laurentia project in front of Hotel de Ville Montreal at 1 p.m. And next week is a Canadian Action Week against GNL, because the final decision is coming very soon. So the future is up to us. You're welcome to visit Climate Reality website to start taking action. Thanks for listening to my presentation today, and I will let my colleague take over now.
Great, thank you so much, Lou. So it's up now for time for our question and answer period. So go ahead and put your questions in the chat. And thank you, Lou, for this very informative presentation. So as people are putting their questions in the chat, I do have a question for you. So I was fascinated by all the discussion regarding agriculture, alternative agriculture. Very pleased to see so many initiatives here in Quebec. You know, when we were discussing this presentation with you, it's interesting, you brought up this peasant farming. And there's a background behind the word. Would you be willing to explain to us why this way of calling this type of farming and why it's important for people?
Yes, of course. So I know peasant has a bad, it's kind of a bad word today, because it sounds very degrading, but actually it's just a word used to describe alternative farming, so opposed of the conventional farming intensive. And it's what have been done for centuries and centuries in most countries, especially in developing countries. So it's really like traditional farming and small scale and no pesticides. I mean, it's pretty much what has been done for centuries, and it's actually this kind of agriculture that is feeding the world right now, because intensive farming is only feeding 30% of the population. However, peasant farming doesn't use a lot of land, contrary to conventional farming, and they mostly don't own their land, because it tends to be poor people, especially in developing countries, especially women. So it's definitely an issue, but it's a very interesting topic.
Absolutely fascinating. I love it. When you explained that to us, I was fascinated. So thank you so much for that. So yeah, it's about people regaining control of, you know, their land and making sure that things are done traditionally the way it should have been. So fascinating. Thank you for bringing that up, Lou. Okay, so we have a question here. What's required to replicate the massive mobilization of the 2019 climate mobilization? In your opinion, what ingredients need to be combined to make that kind of magic happen again?
That's a really great question. It's true that there was a huge momentum a few years ago, and it's hard to keep that momentum because so many things are going on right now. I think it's a combination of several things. You have to reach out to people, you have to have a strong community, and you have to have organizations that work together. That's super important, because I know at least in Montreal there is like a lot of local organization like Coalition Climat Montréal, la SEV, all this also climate, but also social justice movements. And what's really strong is when they work together. So trying to reach out to different organizations and make them work together, and trying to create some publicity around it. I think that's really important. It's not always possible to create such a strong momentum we had, because we also had Greta Thunberg that went to our strike in Montreal, so that added to the momentum. But I think what's also really important is the work that local organizations are doing every day. And even if we don't always see it in the media, it's also that this slow change that is really important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's absolutely true. Awareness has to always be somewhere so that people don't forget this really important discussion. Another question here is, are there other cities or provinces in Canada with similar background as Quebec that took the alternative farming route and have now successfully transitioned from intensive farming?
That's interesting too. So I will speak at least from my experience. I went to BC a couple times, so British Columbia, and I actually went volunteering in an organic farm. And I discussed a lot with the owners, and they're actually so they're situated in the Okanagan Valley, and there's the last organic farm in the Okanagan Valley. And they were explaining to me that there used to be a lot of organic farms in BC in the Okanagan Valley.
Yeah.
But because to meet the standards to be an organic farm, it's really strict and expensive, some of the products you had to use. Most people found it too expensive and just went back to conventional farming, because it's just easier and cheaper in some ways if you want to meet the organic farming certification. So that's why it's really important for the government to subsidize especially the small farmers, because they are the ones that are suffering the most. And also trying to ease the certification around organic farming, because it's really hard to meet these criteria. But definitely in BC, they have a strong sense of farming too, so there is a lot of potential there.
Okay, yeah, that's a good, good answer. Okay, moving on to another question. So you mentioned the GNL project. How can those that are out of Quebec, that are not in the Quebec province, how can they help fight against this GNL pipeline? Mm-hmm. So maybe if you go back to the slide that you had regarding tomorrow, because there's an information regarding those actions.
Yes.
Yeah.
So this is only in Montreal, but I know in general there is a lot of petition online to fight this project. So I will refer to some local organization in Montreal, but that you can participate online too. One is called La SEV, so LA space CEVES, and they have a lot of toolkit to what to do to fight against GNL. Mm-hmm. So if you could go to their Facebook page and read the toolkit, you could take action and sign up for a petition or something like that.
Yes, and Emily from Climate Reality also put in the chat, Greenpeace is also has a petition going on against the GNL project. So go to greenpeace.org/Canada. They also have toolkits, for people to be sharing information about this project. Okay. Another question is, do the problem of climate change affect your psychology? Do you feel it's affecting the morale of young generation?
Oh yes, absolutely. Especially like a lot of young people now are concerned about the climate crisis, and I had a lot of discussion with my friends where it was sometimes you read the news, and especially um, when you're an activist, all your feed on Instagram, for example, is full of depressing climate change news, so it can get a lot. But it's also can be empowering, because I remember last year, that's why I entered climate reality in the first place. It's because I was depressed by everything that was happening climate change wise, and I was like, I need to do something. So I looked around association, organization, and I found Climate Reality Canada, and I followed the Climate Reality Leader certification.
Mhm.
And it's also a way to connect, because you find a lot of people like you, and it reminds you that you're not the only one that is concerned about it, and it can feel a lot. It can be a lot, but it's also very empowering when you realize that you can make a change, you can make a difference.
Yes, and your answer also answers another question that we got was for the hundreds of thousands of people that joined those marches, in 2019, how would you recommend they remain involved in the movement? So you just mentioned you got trained with climate reality, and then stay tuned. There's going to be I'll be sharing also other kind of activities for those who want to become more involved in the climate change discussion. Okay, another one. Do we have any data on how Montreal performed in the first year of its 2030 climate strategy?
I didn't hear the beginning of the question, sorry.
So do we have any data, any information on how Montreal performed in the first year of the 2030 climate strategy?
I don't think it's up yet, but I do know that with climate reality they have this national standard where they look at the performances of each city each year. So I would go to climate reality and go to the national, I'm sorry, I'm not sure I remember the name, but National League Standard, I think.
Mhm.
And you can see how every city in Canada is performing building wise, energy wise. I don't know if 2020 is up yet, but I would look into that. And Montreal official website also have a lot of information on their new climate plan. I will also look into that.
Yeah, and good question, because a follow-up in that question is, with construction and building emissions mentioned as a key component of Montreal's climate strategy, how can the current lack of occupancy downtown, Montreal's offices, buildings, how can that be used to the benefit renovations that improve energy efficiency while balancing a need to revive the downtown economy by getting workers back into the office as soon as possible?
Um, well, the thing is, okay, about buildings, and some of the buildings downtown are really old, and they're not really great climate efficiency wise. So there are actually studies that prove that it's actually better to construct a new clean energy building that try to maintain an old one. It's more efficient to have a new clean building that try to maintain a very old and dysfunctional one. So I don't know if the solution is to create more buildings right now, but it's definitely something to think about. But I think it's a pretty interesting idea to do a carbon neutrality zone downtown, because it would dynamize, it would bring life again to the downtown area that is a bit empty right now, because it would mean more bike paths and more pedestrian lines and less cars, so more life in downtown.
Yeah, absolutely. And Dean is reminding us in the chat that, we can learn about cities in Canada and how they're doing in comparison to others when it comes to certain sustainability indicators. If you go to climatereality.ca/NCL for the National Climate League. So more information there. Okay, good stuff. Do we have any additional questions? So here's another one. Do you think that the new technologies can resolve the problem of climate change?
So yes and no. We're not going to, it's not a good idea to refuse technology because it's a big part of our life and it can definitely be a great tool. But like I said, it's a multi-dimensional problem. It's a problem of plastic, it's a problem of waste, it's a problem of agriculture, it's a problem of consumption. So technology can solve everything, and more and more studies are explaining that renewable energies are great, but they are asking for a lot. Their creation is demanding a lot of energy, and right now the general problem is that we have too much of energy consumption and consumption overall. So creating more and more new technologies is very energy costly, and physically it's not going to work out. So it's a tool, but we have to think about reducing our consumption and reducing our energy consumption. That's like we can't continue to consume as much.
Yeah, that's absolutely true, for sure. So finally, last question. Are you optimistic?
I think I am. I mean, definitely there are days I'm not, because I mean, like everyone, I'm watching the news and there is like a new glacier that just like went off into the sea and in Antarctic. I mean, there is a lot where you can get depressed, loss of biodiversity. But I'm also seeing really a shift in people's mentality, and that's where I'm like the most optimistic about. And I think what like the work we have to do is to change the norms and to change the mentalities. That's why I think it's really important to give presentation about it. And so yes, I'm staying optimistic because I'm actually seeing change. The Montreal climate plan, for example, I mean, it's not perfect, but it's pretty ambitious. So I'm excited about that.
Very great. Awesome. Thank you, Lou. So before we wrap up tonight, I want to leave you, everybody who attended, some concrete solutions and programs to get involved. So I'm going to ask you, Lou, to help me by moving the slides.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to give you some concrete solutions and programs to get involved, whether or not you're trained as a climate reality leader. So here are some examples. So our mission as an organization is to build and connect networks of empowered individuals and communities across Canada by equipping them with the tools and knowledge to bring about new behaviors and policies that lead to a low carbon, resilient, and just future. So there are endless ways you can help bring the structural change needed to solve the climate crisis. So we have a selection of programs you can get involved in. So you can see that on the screen. If you want to help raise awareness and raise the ambition in Canadian climate policy at all levels. So if you are a climate reality leader, you are already doing that through your acts of leadership, activities that educate, drive action and the support solution to climate change. So before we wrap up tonight, Lou, if you can move to the next slide. So if you are not a climate reality leader, so consider attending a leadership corps training. There's always a few going on throughout the year. Some of them now are online. So just making it also easier for anybody to attend. Climate reality leaders are citizens of all backgrounds and are from all over the world. And they've been trained by Al Gore to inspire change and talk about the science and solutions to climate change. So there are over 30,000 worldwide and over 1,400 in Canada. And also, if you want to request a presentation by a climate reality leader for your organization, or if you want to join the Leaders Corps yourself, just head to the website climatereality.org. And The Community Climate Hub is also something you should be checking out. So it's a network of citizen-led groups that push for carbon neutrality at the municipal level by influencing policies and creating a space for meaningful participation in the democratic decision-making process. So to see if a hub exists in your area, or if you want to start one yourself, just go to climatehub.ca. You can also take part in our annual exercise in participative democracy, so the National Climate League, whereby citizens collect data on indicators of quality of life to feed into our annual benchmarking standings report. So you can find more about that or download the report if you go to climatereality.ca/NCL. And then finally, really also very exciting initiative. So the Campus Corps initiative is a student-led program that helps academic institutions become more responsible members to the community. So to do this, Campus Corps chapters have three main goals. So create greener campuses by implementing sustainable practices, bringing administrations to divest from fossil fuels, and then push for climate justice to be deeply ingrained in academic curriculums. So I'm really excited about this one, I must say. And we're currently leading our pilot year, so consisting of 3 university level campuses with the ultimate goal of expanding into other campuses and into levels of education. So we currently have 2 of our 3 pilot student groups formed. And if you'd like to help shape the third one or wish to stay in the loop for future expansions of the program, please head to climatereality.ca/campus/corps. And the next slide will give you our top 10 ways that your day-to-day actions can advance solutions to the climate crisis. So this is our top 10. And we recognize that not everybody is equal in accessing these types of actions. So which is why we acknowledge privilege. And then that privilege is essential, and fighting for climate justice is vital. So above all, let's keep in mind that the goal of individual actions is to scale up to the community, which is only possible for everyone if effective and equitable public policies are in place. And finally, I want to invite you for our next presentation, our monthly presentation. So next month will be featuring Ontario. So this is in 2 weeks, Thursday, April 1st at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time with Climate Reality leader Natalie Lowe and Dan Andre. So make sure you join us in 2 weeks for the continuing Coast to Coast series that we are presenting. And that's it for tonight. So thank you for joining us. I hope you were inspired by Lou's stories and presentation, and hope to see you sometime soon.